Greetings all, and welcome to Luca Sprues. In today's video, I wanted to have a little look at what's inside the box in one of these Hobby Boss Easy Assembly Authentic kits. And this one in particular is the FM-1 Wildcat. Now you're probably wondering why it's not called the F4F Wildcat. And that is because this is actually the General Motors production designation. So when they built the Wildcat, they called it the FM1. Later on, they produced the FM2, which had an upgraded engine and a taller tail, which is a little bit easier to tell apart. So I've picked up this kit because it's a pretty cheap one, and I wanted to have a look at one and share it with you guys. And I'm also using it as a paint test bed for some of the Vallejo Air Watercolor series. I'm actually doing tests with brush painting this stuff, and it seems to be working just as well as any other paint from Vallejo in their model color range. If it works well and I'm happy with it, then I might do a little bit more brush painting with the Air Watercolor series in the future. But anyways, enough of that. That's for a future video. For now, we'll just stick to having a look at this kit. So on the front here, we've got some pretty basic art of what looks like a prototype of the model that's been assembled, just kind of flying through a blank sky backdrop. Lots of little bits of detail here on the side, some dimensions, the scale, the Easy Assembly Kit sticker. In the corner, it says for ages 14 plus, and to be honest, I think that's pretty high. I reckon that you could be a lot younger and still assemble this kit, as you'll see. On the side here, a few more angles of the prototype kit, and then a little bit of the background, which I've already discussed. But yeah, you can have a read of that when you get this kit. On the side here, a few more pictures of the finished model, this time with the landing gear down. And as you can see, it doesn't really look too bad in the photos, so hopefully what we get in the box is the same. And on the back here, this is actually your assembly instructions and your decal guide, as well as the parts map. So since there's no instructions on the inside, we might as well have a look at these before we look at the plastic parts. So step one, as you can see, there's a lot of steps in one, which is a little bit cramped, but luckily it's pretty well laid out. You've basically got a single piece for the fuselage, two elevators which you slot in the back, the wing which comes up to meet the fuselage, a bulkhead that goes in the front here, and it looks like it's keyed like a D, so you can't install it incorrectly. Two options for canopy, one either opened or closed, which is pretty cool. Looks like there's a little bit of detail for the cockpit as separate parts. There's a headrest for the pilot, a little gun that goes, or a gun sight that goes on the front there of the instrument panel. Then for step two, you're putting the propeller through the hole in the middle of the engine, which is all one piece, including the cowling. And then there's a washer on the opposite side, which you then slide into place. So if you don't glue the propeller to this part here, you'll be able to get them to spin. Not that it actually says that, but yeah, using engineering skills. Down here, we've got the undercarriage, which in the Wildcat was very, very strange. You don't see many aircraft with it like this, but basically I've got two, well, it's a single piece here, but the struts that come out, the wheels then go on them, and then there's another little piece here which looks like it's also got the doors to cover the landing gear bay. Then for step three, it looks like you're putting in a little pitot tube, so there's a little bit of nice detail here and there. An inch or a panel there, and I think since that's got a D designation, just like the canopy, I suspect that's a clear part. And that's because the Wildcat would have had a window at the bottom for the pilot to help see when he's landing the aircraft, or I guess just for attacking and that sort of thing. And as for the schemes, you've got two included. Looks like this one's, I believe, about 1943, because I think that's when they brought the red back to the US Navy roundel. It's in the pretty standard for the time three-tone US Navy colours. And then we've got another one from the US Navy, and it's actually in a, looks like a two-tone grey scheme, so like a light grey and a dark grey, and that's the one we see on the front. And then you've got a part sprue here, which I probably should have started with, but it shows the rough layout of the decals there. There's 4 sprues, and then the fuselage, propeller, and the cowling come as a separate pre-molded piece. So they look alright on the instructions, and here let's actually open them up and see what they look like in the flesh, or plastic. Those are all the parts that are included, and as you can see, they've wrapped up a lot of them really quite carefully. So these are all your parts, and as you can see, there is really not too many of them at all. So let's start off by having a look at the fuselage, and then we might look at the wings, the engine, and then the small parts last. So I'll bring that a little bit closer, and as you can see on the sides of the fuselage, on the exterior, there's a mix of raised and recessed panel details. There's actually a few little even riveting details on the front of the engine there. where the access panels are, and yeah, it looks really quite nice. They've done a little bit of the fabricing texture on the tail there, which looks really good. Landing gear is molded in as one piece. As you can see, there is a very, very subtle seam line on the underside here, but they've actually cut out a lot of the bottom here so that the wings will be in place, so that you won't get so much of a problem there. And yeah, you can see a bit of a seam line on the front there. That's just because of the way they've molded it. As you know, most of the time you get two fuselage halves which you stick together, but to simplify things, they've just done it all as one piece. So yeah, it looks like you might have to just do a little bit of cleanup on the seam line there, and maybe rescore some of the panel lines after you've done that. But there's a few little bits of flashing on the front there, and yeah, like I said, bit of a seam line, but that's something you can pretty easily sand down, and you're definitely not going to have any gaps between the fuselage halves on this kit. So yeah, exterior details look quite nice. The cockpit is a little bit lacking in detail. It's sort of just a seat and a really basic joystick. Yeah, but they've done a little bit of detailing on the glare shield there, but not an awful lot. And there's a solid floor, so with that window you're not even going to be able to actually see out of the cockpit or into it. Not that you could see much through it because it's a pretty small window, but yeah, so cockpit detail is severely lacking, but honestly on the outside that looks really quite fantastic. And yeah, the mold's relatively clean except for the seam line, but that's relatively easy to deal with, just a bit of sanding and that'll be gone. So these are your wings with the section of the lower fuselage, and you can see the little gap here where the window would go into place, and it's just solid plastic, so you're not really going to see much out of the window, but oh well. As for the detailing on the wing, again, it's the same story. It's all recessed details. All of the access hatches and drains are all there on the wings. And yeah, as you can see, there's a bit of a seam line along the wings. Again, similar to the fuselage, but easy enough to deal with. You've got holes drilled out for the machine guns there, which are going to have to probably get a little bit neatened up. I think there's a bit of flash and imperfections in that one there. Oh, got rid of it. Yeah, and on the upper surface here, again, same story. There's a few even little rivets along some of the details. All recessed panel lines with a few little raised bumps here and there for some detail. And then this is where the landing gear comes in. As you can see, there's no real detail. It's sort of just a basic shape. But honestly, on the whole, that's pretty good. The detailing looks quite nice. And here is your engine, which is molded as one piece. Nice recessed details on the cowling there, on the panels to access it. As for the engine, the details honestly aren't too bad. They're not the best. You can't really see any detailing on the cylinders. But the shaft there looks pretty nice. Looks like it might need a little bit of a clean up where the propeller goes in. But on the whole, they've got a basic kind of representation of the engine there. And to be honest, the Wildcat's engine sits pretty deep in the cowling, so you're not going to see an awful lot of it. But I suppose you could replace it with a spare one if you've got it, or spend a bit of time trying to detail it, maybe add a bit of wiring. But because the engine's already in the cowling, because it's one molded piece, it's going to be pretty tricky to do anything really without the cowling getting in the way. As for the smaller parts here, we've got the elevators, which, well, horizontal stabilizer and the elevator here. And yeah, similar story to the rest of the kit. It's really quite nicely done. There's recessed details. The fabric has texture on the elevator controls there, and yeah, it looks really quite good. Landing gear is pretty simple. A little bit of a seam line running along the tyre, but that's alright. That's pretty normal anyways for a kit. This is your gun sight here, which is a pretty basic little representation, but it's not too bad. Pitot tube, which actually looks really quite nice there. Here is part of the landing gear. As you can see, it's quite finely detailed on the struts there, although it's all one piece, so it is a little bit simplified. But honestly, not too bad. Not quite sure what they are, but that's the wash for the propeller spinner. We've got another set of struts for the undercarriage there, which looks quite nice. Not sure what this part is either. It might be for if the landing gear is retracted, like a cover for it. But I haven't actually seen it mentioned in the instructions, so maybe it's not too important. There's the headrest, which is, yeah, quite basic, but at least it's a little bit of extra detail for the cockpit. The bulkhead for the engine, it's keyed, as I've mentioned, like a D, so that you put it in the correct way. But yeah, no details really on that one to speak of. So yeah, not looking too bad at all, really. Now, as for the clear parts here, you've got two sets of sprues, as I've mentioned. They're a little bit warped and distorted on the rounder edges there. Less so for the one that goes on the underside for the windows there. But the canopy itself is a little bit distorted, and the plastic is It's not too thick, but I think there's a few little scratches here and there, and it just doesn't look the best. But it's still not too bad at all, and there's not really any cockpit details to speak of anyways. And here you've got the opened position for the canopy. And again, it's a similar story. The quality is not too bad. It's definitely better than a lot of Airfix vintage kits or some other really cheap model kits you can get on the market. I've just realised though that I'm missing the propeller, and I don't know exactly where it is. So I'm just going to have another look through all of the various bits of packaging and see if I can find it. Ah, here we go. So it was in another little bit of bubble wrap, which I think might have gotten caught up with the fuselage. So be careful when you're throwing the packaging out for this kit. Make sure you've got all the parts. So here's our propeller here. And as you can see, the detailing on it's not too bad. Yeah, so the detail looks pretty nice. Looks like a Wildcat propeller. So that's all of the parts there. These are your decals. So I'll open them up. You've got your 2 sets of standard roundels. You've got squadron marking there, which is quite nicely detailed of a 2 cats giving the middle finger. Squadron ID for one of them. So this is for, I think, VC33, which was A25, if I'm not mistaken. Although I don't actually see on the box exactly which aircraft this one was on. Yeah, oh, no, there we go. It was on this one here. So yeah, like I said, VC33. So I'm not sure if it's the squadron code or the aircraft's own identifier of some kind. I'm not an expert really on the US Navy and World War II, but hopefully this kit will be a bit of a learning experience. But anyways, that's some of the text on the aircraft. All looking quite nicely done. A little bit of fuel cap details there, and some Navy stencils. So as you can see, they go into quite fine detail there, and you can still kind of read most of that. So yeah, it's been a long time since I've done a Hobby Boss kit. I think it would probably be a good 4, maybe even 5 years now at this point. But I can't remember having any issues with the decals, but that's going to be something we'll have to see when we actually build this kit. So after having had a look at the FM-1 Wildcat Easy Assembly Kit by Hobby Boss in 72nd scale, I have to say, on the whole, I'm really quite impressed. This kit only costs about $12, which is incredibly cheap. That's almost half the price of your average Airfix kit. Definitely cheaper than an Airfix starter kit as well, but obviously it doesn't include the paints like one of those. And it looks like it's incredibly easy to assemble. I definitely reckon you could get someone as young as maybe 8 even to assemble this kit without too many issues. It's really quite a basic one. And obviously, if you're a more experienced modeler, you can spend a bit of time, if you really wanted, upgrading it. But to be honest, that's going to take a lot of effort, and things like trying to get the clear windows to show through to the cockpit are probably going to take more effort than they're worth. But if you're after a cheap model kit to practice new techniques on, or if you're a war gamer after a lot of aircraft pretty cheap, then this is a really great kit. I'm looking forward to doing this kit and experimenting with it. If you're a beginner, war gamer, or just want a kit that's easy to practice on, I definitely recommend this one. Thank you very much for watching this video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to leave a like and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Big shout out, as always, to my wonderful patrons for helping me fund buying these kits. Also a special shout out to Tectonic Hobbies, the local store on the Sunshine Coast for all your hobby needs, where you can buy this kit and many of the other ones that you see behind me now. I'll be doing a build video on this kit in the hopefully not too distant future, so stay tuned for that. Until then, thanks again, and as always, model on!